This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town along the Tom Bigby River in northeast Mississippi called Columbus, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This episode is about Constable Abe Loftis, who gave his life in the line of duty. Abe Loftis was born in Lowndes County in 1852 to Powell and Polly Ann Loftis. He apparently left Lowndes County for adventure in Texas in the 1870s. By 1880, when he was 29 years old, Loftis was married to Emma, called Loftis, we don't know her last name, and working as an overseer in Lowndes County for the 1880 census. Abe and his wife and children left farming, and he became a tax collector for the city and the county. They lived at 406 North 8th Street in Columbus. Loftis was elected constable in August of 1905 by an overwhelming majority. In 1906, Loftis was sent as the constable by Justice of the Peace H.D. Foote with an affidavit to arrest one Ollie Moore, a local flim-flam man. Moore had taken out a fraudulent loan through the Masonic Temple on Gleeds Corner and had obtained the money under false pretenses. Loftis, his son Perry, and a Mr. Tom Haynes went to Moore's home near the coal chutes near the Southern Railway about midnight on a Friday night. Moore denied he was their man, and Loftis told him he was still under arrest. Moore grabbed a hammer and went after Loftis, who drew his service revolver and fired. Moore ran out the door, and Loftis assumed he had escaped into the dark. The next morning, Moore was found approximately 100 yards from his home near the railroad crossing. He had a hole in his chest just below his heart. JP's Justice of the Peace Foote and Matthews held a review of the incident and ruled the killing justifiable due to self-defense by the constable. Nothing much of note is written about Abe Loftis again until March 28 of 1909 in the Columbus Commercial. Abe Loftis at this point was 57 years old. And in the commercial, in the Columbus Commercial, the title of the article is Abe Loftis Seriously Injured. Loftis fell a distance of 20 feet from a coal chute, the same coal chute which was nearby where he'd gotten into the incident with Ollie North some years earlier. At the time he fell the 20 feet, he received a skull fracture by hitting his head on the rail. The article reads, on Friday morning at 2 o'clock, Constable Abe Loftis and two assistants were on special duty, were taken by a summons to go to the neighborhood of the Southern Shops for purpose of raiding a craps game. When the officers reached the coal chute, thinking they had located the offenders in the sand house, which is located about 20 feet from the bottom of the chute, they proceeded to make a search. Ed Cole, a hostler at the Southern Shops, called one of the crap shooters by name, and at which time Mr. Loftis advised his men to go slow and make the advance carefully. And about that time, he lost his foothold and fell head first, almost 20 feet, striking his head on a railway of the track, receiving serious injuries, which would cause his eventual death. A telephone message was sent immediately for Gunter Brothers' ambulance, and Loftis was taken at once to the Columbus Hospital. Loftis was considered one of the best officers that Lowndes County had at the time. He had been diligent in trying to rid the city of all kinds of offenders, and the people of the town wished him a speedy recovery. On March 31st of 1909, Loftis actually succumbed to his wounds. He died at the Columbus Hospital. Constable Loftis, who on that raid and fell the 20 feet, had finally succumbed to his injuries and died at the hospital on an early hour of a Monday morning. Constable Loftis was considered a terror to local evildoers and had recently been making things very uncomfortable for all the illegal crap games that were going on around the rail yards. He and Deputy J.H. Lance and policeman Jim Morton had gone to the chute for the purpose of making a raid at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. When the railroad shops were reached, the officers learned that the crap shooters were in a room at the summit of the chute known as the sand pit, and they started up there. Just as they were nearing the sand pit, an engineer emerged from the door with a lantern in his hand, and that light blinded Constable Loftis. Loftis then made a false step and fell to the ground 20 feet below, his head striking the steel rail of the railroad track, causing a compound fracture of his skull. The officer was carried wounded and bleeding to the hospital where an operation was performed. He was considered at 57 at that time an advanced age. However, he allegedly stood the operation well. But on Sunday, he began to sink, as they would say, and grew rapidly worse until the end. Loftis was considered a fearless officer and a faithful and efficient man, and always discharged his duties in a way that was gained respect from the entire community. He was survived by his wife, 3 daughters, and 1 son. And he was a member of the Queen City Camp number 23, Woodman of the World, and the members of the camp officiated at the funeral, which was held at the family residence on North 8th Street. The sermon was conducted by Reverend W.A. Hewitt, the pastor of First Baptist Church, and Reverend J.J. Hill, the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church. He was buried at Friendship Cemetery. Captain W.D. Prowell, Judge Beverly Matthews, Captain H.D. Foote, Misters Lance, Dothrow, Stribling, and Morton all officiated as pallbearers at his funeral. That is the story of Abe Loftis, a man who died in the line of duty and is buried at Friendship Cemetery in Columbus, Mississippi, along the Tombigbee River. Thank you for coming on this little trip down memory lane with the Tombigbee Tales. Until next time.